Around 12 months ago, I restored my neglected worm farm, which is a converted bathtub, and it's now time for harvesting the compost. In this video, I'm going to show you my favorite way to use the castings and make them stretch. If you're new here, I'm Nikki, and I'm on a mission to grow as much food as I can in our regular suburban block here in subtropical Australia. The compost or castings that worms produce is honestly like gold for the garden. It's packed full of beneficial bacteria that is incredible for your soil health. I also feel like that it's one of the easiest ways to process your kitchen waste, as long as you're doing it right. The key thing is to make sure that you give them plenty of bedding. We use damp shredded paper, and we are very careful not to overfeed them. There are so many ways to set up worm farms. We've used commercial ones in the past. We just found that they were a little bit harder to manage. The worms kept escaping, and there was far too much leachate, which some people call worm wee, which is basically anaerobic water that isn't exactly the best for your garden. A good worm farm really should have very little leachate at all. I'm pretty happy with the worm tub. It's a bit hands-on when it comes to harvest time, but I don't mind that as it's perfect height to do so. It's definitely easier than emptying the large compost bins. I would eventually like to set up some continuous flow-through system CFTs in the future, but this one is working really well for us now. Using the vermicompost is pretty easy. You can simply sprinkle it in your garden. I love adding it to seed raising mixes, but a good way to make it stretch further is to create an actively aerated compost tea to use as a biological inoculant for your soil. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. Aerated tea isn't a fertilizer and shouldn't be used as a replacement for fertilizer. This is just going to be my home-based method for very small batches. I only do a small amount at a time. This inoculant is beneficial for your bacterial dominant crops, which generally includes most of your annual veggies, your brassicas, lettuce, carrots, beets, tomatoes. Garlic leans more towards the fungal dominance, which is why we inoculate with mycorrhizae when we plant, and I won't be using it on my strawberries either. So things you'll need, I'm going to be using a 20-litre bucket. I only intend on making around 10 litres, which is plenty for our entire garden as a foliar spray. If I wanted to do a soil drench, I'd probably triple this quantity. It can't be stored, you'll need to use it as soon as it's ready. And it may bubble up, so go up in size with the amount you intend to use. You'll need a pretty powerful aquarium air pump or a couple of smaller ones. I upgraded to this one, but previously I used a couple of the battery operated ones. I was trying to get away from using air stones to get more bubbles, and I got some of these suction caps, but spoiler alert, they don't work. After an hour of me going and sticking them back down, I ended up popping on some air stones. You'll also need a paint strainer to hold your worm castings. You don't want to compress the castings, so the paint strainer works really well as it gives them plenty of room to move around. You'll need your cup of worm castings. Make sure that they are well done. Mine are now a year old and the worms had well and truly moved on from the area that I harvested from. You'll also need something to feed your microbes. You can use a fish hydrolysate, a kelp meal, alfalfa meal. I'm going to use a fish hydrolysate kelp mix from Red Soil Organics. For 10 litres of water, I'm only going to use a teaspoon of it. I did used to use molasses, but I do believe the latest research suggests that it also feeds the non-beneficial bacteria as well. So now I stick with other things. Now you just need to add in your water. Make sure it's either rainwater, filtered water, or if you're using town water, you'll need to let it sit for a day in the sun to off-gas any of the chlorine, which is what I did. First step is to turn on your bubbler and test that you're getting enough bubbles. You really want it to be looking like a roaring boil. I call it like a witch's brew. If you're not achieving this level of bubbles, you might need to add another bubbler or potentially look at decreasing your water quantity. I think that that's probably the most important part when it comes to making this. I think eventually I would like to rig up a better system for the bubbler, but for the purposes of making this accessible to everyone, I think that the air stones are perfectly fine if this is something that you want to do occasionally. Once you've tested that, you can add your worm castings to the paint strainer and hang it in the center. So just don't let it sit on the bottom of the bucket. I've just used a plant stake to tie it to with a rubber band and I hang it so it's just submerged. Once that's all in, you can add your food and let it bubble away for 24 hours. If I was wanting to do this on a commercial level, I probably would be checking it under a microscope to make sure that this was really full of all the good guys that we're wanting, but we're just using this in our backyard. After 24 hours it's ready to use, you should see a few foamy bubbles on the surface, and it shouldn't smell bad at all if it does. It should have a real earthy smell, like the forest floor, like well done finished compost. It's why I like using the fish hydrolyser, as it smells really bad at the start, and so you can really tell once that smell has gone that it is ready. If it does smell, you've either not given it enough aeration, your equipment might have been contaminated, you've either fed it too much, or you've left it too long. I find if this has happened, you just have to ditch it and start again. Just make sure everything is clean and you adjust your quantities to get a new batch going. If you find this has happened, just ditch it and start again, and just make sure that everything is super clean when you go again. As for usage, you can use it as either a foliar spray or a soil drench. A good way is to do a foliar spray on your leafy greens and a soil drench for your root veggies. I find particularly good to use as a foliar spray to help keep pests and diseases at bay, and a soil drench if I need to fix any problem soil. I had full intentions of doing a foliar spray using a sprayer, but my sprayer broke midway through, so I had to resort to a watering can, but I still did focus on the foliage as opposed to soaking the soil. You can also add it to your compost bins to just give them a little bit of a microbial beneficial bacteria boost. If you're using it as a foliar spray, I recommend harvesting everything you need before you do it. And when you do harvest, if it hasn't rained since your application, just give everything a really good wash, which you should be doing anyway. Although this isn't really considered a fertilizer, more of a biological inoculant, it really is supercharged. So I would only do this once a month on my veggie patch. Often it's only a change of season thing, or if I have any specific soil-based issues that I need to deal with. I find a good time to do it is before rain or just after rain. And like regular feeds, you need to do it either early morning or afternoon. Just avoid that middle of the day sunshine. Anyway, I hope you guys have found that helpful. I'd love to know if you've tried this in your garden, any kind of aerated teas or compost teas, and what kind of results you've had. Please leave a comment below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.